So much for being here. Good afternoon. My name is Fozdar, I'm an associate professor and Shirin Fozdar fellow at School of Social Sciences. So I would like to welcome you to this public forum, which is sponsored by Shirin Fozdar program. But before we start, I have a short video clip that I would like to show you. So let's watch it together. And after the video, I would like to introduce Ms. Claire Sham to give a welcome address.
Shirin Fozdar, the epitome of women empowerment, an advocate of women's liberation. Shirin Fozdar was born in 1905 in Bombay, India. She was a pioneer of women's rights. She was one of the founders of the Singapore Council of Women in 1952 and a key figure establishing the Muslim Sharia Court and the Women's Charter in 1961.
We must make our lives sublime and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time.
The Shirin Fozdar program was first started by Association of Women for Action and Research, which was then institutionalized under SMU in 2009 as a Shirin Fozdar program to educate, train, and provide capacity building to the women of the community.
The idea is to create a platform for the faculty, students, the community to be able to network and to share their perspectives. The mission of the Shirin Fozdar program in SMU is really to strengthen what I call a resilient community. Resilience, integrating all walks of life, creating a connectivity, and being continually engaged is, I feel, an empowering journey.
Established in 2016 and one of the initiatives of the Shirin Fozdar program, the scholarship is available to full-time female undergraduates at the Singapore Management University.
We give our students the opportunity through the program to do community service. We also pursue research through our research fellowships that the Shirin Fozdar program provides. And we also are very happy that we can support some women to attend our programs with the scholarships that we provide through the Shirin Fozdar program.
This is the first year this scholarship is awarded, and this is my great honor to be one of the scholars this year, together with Yashpi.
I have been involved with the SFP by emceeing for some of their events and also by being a contributor to their WOW library. So I was the MC for the Shirin Fozdar program annual lecture. The guest for that event was Dr. Nolene Hazer.
The objective of the scholarship is to recognize outstanding female undergraduates of foreign nationalities and to support them in their education at the university.
It's not just about financial assistance, but rather a blessing for me, whereby I'm given the platform to chase for my dream and build my own future.
At SMU, we are committed to diversity and inclusion. And therefore, I'm very happy with the Shirin Fozdar program because it is actually a practical translation of that commitment.
The Shirin Fozdar Conference on the Move consists of a series of conferences designed to bring women from all around the globe to discuss issues concerning women in varying fields. Over the last 7 years, SFP's flagship Conference on the Move has reached out to over 1,500 people and featured speakers and participants from over 45 countries.
It is wonderful to be able to lead groups of women and men, young and old, from all sectors of life to visit various enterprises. And therein we can bring out issues and understand a little bit more of how society works.
The Shirin Fozdar Community Service Projects Grants is established to facilitate the advancement of the women community. It funds meaningful and sustainable community service projects, both locally and overseas, with the desire to make a difference to women's lives. It has also contributed to NGO capacity building work in countries as far as India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and Kenya.
I hope that I can be involved in many more Shirin Fozdar events.
By being a part of the initiatives here, I can be a part of the change. I can be a part of creating that ripple effect where I help others around me achieve their full potential.
When there's a good idea is shared, and a good plan is being executed, everyone gets motivated to do the next best. And that's what we hope to achieve in SFP, so that everyone matters and everyone can be engaged.
So now I would like to welcome Ms. Chen to give a welcome address.
Thank you all. First, warm welcome to all our foreign participants to take your time to come here. And first, a big thank you to Professor Klug and Professor Christine, where are you? There, for making this happen. And of course, Shirin Fozdar, we've been doing this for about more than 20 years, starting from AWARE and then moving on to being a trust fund managed by a bank, and now we institutionalize this in SMU to make it into the permanent feature. Each of you will probably have this little brochure, and to see that some of the programs that are running, basically there are 7 signature programs. Conference on the Move. We are tired of doing conferences in classrooms. We are taking people out to the society to see what other people do, and we learn from it. The annual lecture this year is going to be September the 8th. Please mark the date. Professor Lily Kong is going to deliver their signature lecture. The basic brief is, has the Singapore city delivered its promise to create a quality living for us? That is a general brief, but she's going to look at urban planning and look at the many issues that may impact on lives, particularly lives of women and the elderly. Then we have the SF Scholarship. You saw in the video 2 of the young people that we fund every year to support the scholars in the region. This is the inaugural fellowship lecture. And we chose this topic on aging because all of you would know Kalyani, who is here, Stephen Yo, who's been a practitioner, and Bob, who is also in one of the NGOs, and Dr. Jennifer Lee, who is in the Integrated Care Center. All of you are invited because you are the specific circle interested, committed to this development, and you are the experts. I'm merely facilitating and getting people around this to understand, to learn, to see what we can do more at our various fronts. For example, in the hotel that I'm in, Pine-Tree, we're actually looking into wellness as aging as an important segment in the next 10 years to come. The way we will build, the services we offer, how we design in our room, what programs we design for our so-called future silver customers have all become something of importance to the hospitality sector. We also have the community service grants, and for those who may have on your own front, community projects which you think are worthy of our attention and support, please let Julie know. We support projects not just only in Singapore, but in the region, and as far as Kenya in Africa. As long as they are all issues and projects related to development, men and women. But we have a focus on the women, yes, but we do look at strategies that help to build resilient communities. And we also have a Shirin Fozdar Diversity and Inclusion Award. And last year, the recipients were from our para-champions. And last, we have a library and bibliography. All of you would have received a little sheet of paper to start doing reading work in the evenings. And if you go to our website, you will probably see a lot more of specific interest reading lists. This one is just on aging, but we have a whole list of other titles on the website for you to access and for you to also share with us if you have any interesting articles, publications you would like to post with the Shirin Fozdar website. So it brings us a very quick snapshot of what we are here for, Shirin Fozdar's program, and we hope to engage you in various projects. Now we are doing aging. We also will be looking at other issues, but resilience, inclusivity, inclusiveness, connectivity, and engagement are our motto. That's why we say it's RISE. Why RISE? Because it's so basic. And it is sustenance and it is sustainability. So thank you again for all. And there's one couple I need to recognize. They're the oldest, and they are so connected to Shirin Fozdar, I cannot deny it. That's the son of Shirin Fozdar, Dr. Shirin Fozdar.
And I was told that nonagenarians are not allowed, but I just sneaked in.
Who have just turned
90,
90.
6 months ago.
6 months ago, she's 90 and 6
she'll be
months.
90 in 6 months' time.
Let's give them a round.
My mother has passed on, but if you want to see a Shirin Fozdar, a little different in shape, here she is. She is the coalescing factor, the unifying force. So thank you, Claire, for all the work you've been doing.
Thank you.
And
Thank
more
you.
power to you.
Thank you. I can't leave the
Thank you so much for being here. So I would like to express thanks again to Shirin Fozdar program for that generous support of this forum, and for also bringing a group of very highly qualified researchers here to work on analysis that would improve our understanding on opportunities and challenges in family support for older persons in Southeast Asian and East Asian countries. So my talk today will try to give you introduction of the demographic changes that are taking place in the region and how that may have implications for support that family give to their older age members. So you might have actually watched these documentaries that show on Channel New Asia over the last few weeks. So there's a series of elderly poor in Southeast and East Asia. So just last week, they talked about how poverty had forces some families in Myanmar to neglect their elderly members, right? A few weeks ago, they featured a story of this 82-year-old lady. Her name is Mrs. Chan Ti-Hung, and she's 82 years old. She's earned a living by selling lottery tickets on the streets of Ho Chi Minh City. So they talk about how, poverty in the family, the lack of support from her children as well as grandchildren, and the very little support she can get from communities and government. And that's what forced her to migrate 600 kilometers from a province called Phu Yen in the coastal area of Myanmar to Ho Chi Minh, of Vietnam to Ho Chi Minh City. Her story may be anecdotal. It may not be representative of average older women in Vietnam, but it's actually not that uncommon. It's actually increasingly, it's going to be the challenge that many of us have to think about, right? The questions of who are going to take care of our elderly is something that is of concern to governments across Asia. So in the past, family used to be, the support and care of the family used to be met within the family. Government and communities provide very little support or very limited support to the elderly. Mostly these would be provided to the elderly by their adult children. Material support, social support, personal care support. But with recent change in terms of demographic transitions as well as socioeconomic change, this had made it more difficult or challenging for family members to fulfill these roles. So, and one of the major changes that are taking place in the region is fertility decline. As you can see from this figure, all across Asia, except for Japan, which at the start of the period that we're looking at, 1960s, already had quite a low fertility. But the rest, on average, women have about 5 to 7 kids in their lifetime. But this has changed radically within the next few decades. Right now, countries like Singapore have very low fertility of just 1.2. Japan, South Korea, countries like Thailand and China are not that far behind. Vietnam and Malaysia has already reached replacement level, and it's only in Philippines and Laos that fertility is still relatively high. Women have on average about 3 kids in their lifetime. Not only family size is smaller, but among those fewer children that they have, they also tend to be more dispersed geographically due to migration, right? Because opportunities in terms of work is not available in that area, so they have to migrate elsewhere. So this shows a figure from Thailand. This figure shows data from Thailand. So from 1995 up to 2011. So what it shows that it's in 1995, about 28% of children reported that they live outside their parents' province, right? But by 2011, that has increased to almost 40%. And this is consistent in rural area as well as urban area, but more severe in rural areas. And this is not experience that are very unique to Thailand. Vietnam, in Myanmar, a country that I studied recently. So in our recent survey, we try to interview households without migrant members. And our research team told us that it's actually very hard to find households without migrant members because migration has become very common in their locations. So what are the results of smaller families and increased migration? So what happened is that there will be change in living arrangement of older persons. Co-resident with adult children used to be a common living arrangement for older persons, right? And this has been declining as shown in this figure. Again, the data is from Thailand. So back in 1986, about 77% of older persons reported that they live with their child, right? And this had declined to only just above 50% in 2014. So you can see that there has been a change in terms of, it's much more common now for older persons to live alone or to live with only their spouse. So with this change in living arrangement used to be considered as a vehicle for intergenerational support, right? Material support, social support, and personal care support. With this change in living arrangement, so there are concerns about how would this have impact on the support that older persons receive. But you have to take in mind that not all type of supports are equally affected by this demographic change. Material support, for example, does not require physical proximity. Remittances can be sent from anywhere. So this photograph is taken by my colleague, John Nodell, and it shows this older Thai man standing proudly next to this bright blue fridge that brought for him by his migrant son. Likewise, social support in the form of face-to-face interaction may require physical proximity, but phone contact does not. This is a photograph that I took during my trip to Myanmar last year. So it's a poster of a telecommunications company, Telenor, right, that's just operating in Myanmar. So it shows a grandson holding a phone to his grandmother who's smiling because I think she's happy getting a chance to talk to her migrant child. In Myanmar, it's quite interesting. According to 2012 surveys, less than 10% of elderly households reported to have access to phone. This phone company started operating in Myanmar between 2013 and 14. When a survey, a DHS survey was conducted in 2015, 73% of households reported to have access to phone. So you can see that there has been dramatic change in this regard. And that may have implications for intergenerational support. Unlike material support and social support, personal care support that, for those who are too frail or chronically ill to care for self does require continuous physical presence. So this is a photo again taken by John Nodell showing an elderly daughter taking care of her bedridden and much older mother, right? And this is from Thailand. And this is kind of worrisome when we look at thinking about, that people now have lived longer, but are they really healthier? And in ASEAN is of a particular concern. So this figure shows life expectancy at age 60 in ASEAN countries compared to Japan, China, and India. In Japan, for example, a person that age 60 can expect to live for about 25 years. And out of those 25 years, 5 years would be years that they would experience ill health. So it means that this is the time where you require intensive personal care. Okay. In ASEAN, life expectancy is lower. Average people age 60 can expect to live for about 19 years, and out of those 19 years, 7 years would be in ill health, right? So it means that as in ASEAN countries, the burden of taking care of people with long-term care needs may be heavier, okay? So this is of our concern. Another important thing is that not only people live longer, we also will have more and more people who are older, right? So there's substantial population aging that are taking place in the region, right? Japan, again, is leading the trend, right? Right now, most countries, South Korea, China, Singapore, Thailand, and the rest of Southeast Asia have less than 20% of the total population age 60 and older. But in 35 years, that could be as high as 40%, right? Japan, again, still lead the trend of 43% of total population would be age 60 and older, right? Singapore will reach 40%. Thailand, a middle-income country, is going to be almost as high as Singapore at 37%. But a lot of attention has been paid to countries where there's higher proportion of older persons. But it is important to note that we have to pay attention to countries like Cambodia, Laos, and Philippines too, even though their population age structure seems to be quite relatively low, right? In 2050, it is projected that in Laos, for example, 15% of the population will be 60 plus. The reason that we need to pay attention to them is because the percent increase in terms of absolute number will be very rapid in these countries. Cambodia and Laos, for example, the number of older persons will almost quadruple in the next 35 years. So what does this mean? This means that if they're not well prepared, this can have impact on how the government deliver healthcare and other needs for older persons. And it is also important to keep in mind that these ASEAN countries, except for Singapore, they're aging at a much lower income compared to Japan and South Korea. And this can have implications in terms of how government as well as communities can sort of fill in the gap that family cannot meet. So just to sum up my presentation, so these are issues that we have to think about when we think about how demographic change may have implications for support for elderly. First of all, will improve health of older persons, enable them to work and support themselves longer. If this is important, compressing those ill health will be very important. Will fewer but better educated adult children compensate for smaller numbers in relation to financial support for aging parents? So maybe having fewer students may not be such a good idea if the fewer children are filial and willing to support their parents. Third question is, will increasing retirement and welfare benefits of future elderly crowd out material support from adult children. This is concern of a lot of governments, right? That they're not really willing to actually, provide more services for elderly because they thought that, the children may not help as much. So far, the data from Thailand with social pension, with universal health insurance, it doesn't seem to support this crowd out hypothesis. Will having fewer or no children permit future elderly to accumulate greater wealth for their own support in old age? If that is the case, it is important for government to sort of have mechanisms through which people can save money for their own retirement. And a lot of countries in Southeast Asia are not quite ready yet. And lastly, how can families, communities, and state deal with the decreased probability that no adult children is nearby when long-term care is needed? So this means that maybe community-based care need to be established, right? Given that there's a lot of change in terms of economic change, demographic change, as well as technological change, this will affect the environment that future generations of older persons live in. So therefore, for us to really implement policy, or we need to have a continual monitoring of the situation of older persons. And today we have a very impressive lineup of presentations that would walk you through selected Southeast Asian countries and talk about opportunities as well as challenges in family care for older persons. We'll first start by Dr. Kubaju, who's going to talk about the case of Singapore. And then we'll go through South Korea. Prof. Ha will talk about specifically about South Korean elderly that are affected by dementia. And then we'll move to Myanmar, a resourceful country. So Prof. John Nodell will talk about long-term care needs as well as community efforts to bridge the gap in care needs in Myanmar. And then we'll go to China, and Christine Ho from School of Economics at SMU will talk about gender-based parental investment and how that have implications for old age support in China. And lastly, we'll be wrapping up by Professor Oshiai from Kyoto University from Japan, when she's going to give us sort of the changing patterns of elderly care in Japan compared to the rest of Southeast Asian countries. So without further delay, please let me invite Dr. Mubaju to give her talk.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me to share some results from a recent paper that I've been working on. And the focus of this paper is on living arrangements of community dwelling older Singaporeans. And in this particular presentation, I'm looking at the consequences or impacts in terms of social and economic well-being. So just to give you a little bit of background, a lot of the prior literature, previous studies have shown that household context plays an important role in older adults' well-being in later life. And while the norm in most Asian societies is for older adults to co-reside with their spouse and their children, some older adults, whether by choice or circumstances, live in other less common arrangements. And shared living arrangements can serve important functions for both older adults and adult children, and thus the consequences of certain living arrangements on the health and well-being of older adults is important to examine. So, given the background, the objectives of our paper were to provide a general descriptive overview of living arrangements in Singapore and assess the extent to which living arrangements have changed in Singapore over a 2-year period. And we also then examined the economic, social, and health consequences of certain types of living arrangements. The conceptual framework that we use for our paper is based on a broader framework of factors affecting well-being of the elderly, which was initially proposed by Remittances in 2002. And while his framework has a lot more than this, it's part of a bigger framework with many variables in it. What we're looking at, the focus of the current paper is basically on the link between living arrangements, which form the intergenerational support system, and outcomes such as, we identify work, retirement, leisure, and economic well-being as our social and economic well-being outcomes, and physical, mental, and emotional health indicators as our health indicators in our paper. So the data that we are using is the panel on health and aging of Singaporean elderly. We call it the PHASE, and it's a nationally representative longitudinal survey data that we've been collecting at Duke NUS. Wave 1 was conducted in 2009 with approximately about 5,000 older adults who were 60 years and older, or their proxy respondents were interviewed face-to-face. And in Wave 2, the same older adults were then followed up again, and we got about 3,000 older adults or their proxy respondents were re-interviewed in 2011, 2 years afterwards. So the key variable that we're looking at here is, of course, living arrangements. It is a mutually exclusive categorical variable which was derived from the household roster, indicating whether the respondent lives with their spouse and child, lives with their spouse but does not have any children, lives with their children but no spouse, lives with others, and others here includes a person other than spouse or child. So it could be a parent, a sibling, a friend, tenant, or even a domestic worker. So an older adult could be living by themselves but with a domestic worker, and that's still considered as living with others. And living alone here is completely by themselves, so they do not even have a domestic worker living with them here. And in all of these categories, of course, the domestic worker or other people could be present. And the variables we're looking at, so we're examining how living arrangements at Wave 1 associated with several outcome variables at Wave 2, 2 years later, controlling for various baseline characteristics. And our outcome measures include a number of variables that have been dichotomized. So in our analysis, we've used logistic regression. And we've divided up our outcome variables into the two that I mentioned before, the economic and social indicators. Here are work status, basically measuring whether the older adult is currently engaged in full-time or part-time work versus not working, retired, or homemaker. Home ownership, whether they solely or jointly own their own home versus owned by someone else. The perceived income adequacy is derived from a question of, do you feel that you have adequate income to meet your expenses? So elderly responding enough money to just enough money have perceived income adequacy versus those who have some to something much difficulty to meet their expenses. And strong social networks, this is based on Lubin's revised social network scale, which is modified to assess social networks outside the household. And those who score in the top quartile of the scale are categorized as having strong social networks. And the last one is participation in social networks. This one we're looking at whether the older adult is attending either a neighborhood event or a place of worship at least once every month. And here, the health indicators that we're looking at are positive self-rated health, and that's based on a question of how would you describe your state of health. Those responding very healthy or healthier than average, as opposed to average, somewhat unhealthy, or very unhealthy. Free from depressive symptoms. This is from the CESD, Center for Epidemiological Studies, depressive scale, where a score less than 7 is classified as being free from depressive symptoms in a scale of 0 to 24. And lastly, the strong personal mastery is from the Perlin's personal mastery scale, and we score those who are in the top quartile as categorized as having strong personal mastery. So to go into some of the descriptive results first, what we find here is that in 2009 at Wave 1, the majority of older Singaporeans live with their spouse and child. About 20% live with their spouse, a little over a quarter live with their child, and about 6% live in the other living arrangement with living with others, or 6% living alone. And if we look at now the changes in living arrangements in 2011 by living arrangements in 2009, basically we're looking at the stability of living arrangements over the 2-year period. As you can see from this figure, the living arrangements do not change very much over the 2-year period. I mean, it's only 2 years, so the figure shows that the majority of older Singaporeans have the same living arrangement in 2011 as in 2009. I mean, there are some minor transitions, some small proportions that occur in various living arrangement categories. It's also important to note here, though, that this figure excludes those elderly that were lost to follow-up, who had died, or who had been institutionalized over the 2-year period. And now to go into some of the multivariate results that we found. This table is showing the effects of living arrangement in 2009 and economic and social outcomes in 2011. And these are logistic regression odds ratios. They are adjusted for based on age, number of living children, ethnicity, education, housing type, disability, chronic diseases, and also wave 1 well-being status. And the reference category we're looking at is against those older adults who live with their spouse and child, or with their spouse. Now we combine these two together because in our preliminary analysis we didn't find a lot of difference between the older adults in these two categories. So the adjusted regression effects, what this shows is that those elderly who live with their children, they're less likely to own their own home and less likely to have strong social networks outside the household. The elderly who live with others, compared to this reference category, are more likely to be currently working, less likely to own their homes, and less likely to have strong social networks. And surprisingly, those older adults who live alone did not differ very significantly from elderly who live with their spouse or children. And this is only actually in the multivariate results when everything else was adjusted for. In the bivariate results, there are obvious differences. But once you control for everything else, the effects seem to have wiped out. And this one is looking the same table as before, but now the outcomes are for the health outcomes. And it's self-rated health, depressive symptoms, and strong personal mastery. And here what we find is that for positive self-rated health, there does not seem to differ much by your living arrangements. Elderly who live with their child only are disadvantaged, particularly disadvantaged here, where they are less likely to be free from depressive symptoms and less likely to have strong personal mastery. And those who live alone are less likely to be free from depressive symptoms, but do not differ in other aspects of emotional and physical well-being. So to just summarize some of the results that we found, we see that, I mean, in the descriptives of older adults in Singapore continue to co-reside with their spouse, children, or both in Singapore. Though there is a small but growing proportion who live alone, that has been increasing. I think in the 80s it was about 2%, and now it's increased to about 6%. And the results that we found is encouraging that older adults who live with their children, with others, or alone are equally likely to participate in social activities. And the older adults who live with their children or live with others seem to fare worse in social networks outside of their household and in home ownership. And it's the older adults who live alone do fare worse in terms of depressive symptoms, which is consistent with most other prior studies. But what we also found was that older adults who live with their children are also disadvantaged in terms of depressive symptoms and in personal mastery. And some other prior studies in Singapore have also found similar results. So the main implication of some of the findings here is that, I mean, as Puk had mentioned before, especially in Singapore, the government has emphasized co-residence or the family as being the first line of support for older adults. And it's generally assumed that co-residence ensures social, economic, and emotional well-being. So our results show that older Singaporeans living with their children are also disadvantaged in many aspects. And some of the policies should be directed at engaging older adults living with their families as well, along with the policies that are there for older adults living with others or living alone in some of the broader social activities to ensure their well-being at old age. So just to go into a bit of we had some limitations in our studies, in our analysis, in that in our sample we could not include older adults that are in institutional settings in 2009 or who had been institutionalized in the 2 years. But the percentage is very low, especially in Singapore. Only about 2% of older adults occupy nursing home beds. And we've also used baseline living arrangements, have not considered changes in living arrangements in our analysis. But as you saw in our figure, the changes are very little over the 2 waves. And finally, I'd just like to acknowledge my co-authors, Truls and Angelique, who are both at the Center for Aging and Research. We co-wrote the paper together, and it's just recently been accepted for publication in Aging and Society. And this work was also supported by the NUS SAO Aging Research Initiative at NUS. And the data, of course, was collected through funding provided by NSF and funding source. Thank you.
So our next speaker is Professor Ha from Seoul National University. And she's going to talk about couples in South Korea that are dealing with dementia.
Thank you. Thank you, folks, for inviting, and thanks Shirin Foundation for the support. I am very honored to be here today to talk about Korean older adults and challenges that Korean older adults are facing. Today, I'm going to talk especially about older adults who are facing dementia, the couples where one has dementia and the caregiver. So, to give you some background, Korea is one of the most rapidly aging countries around the globe. As you can see here, in 2010, only 11% of Korean population was 65 and over. However, in 2050, 38.2% will be age 65 and over. With the increase in both the percent and the number of older adults in Korea, the need to address the problem of dementia is growing because there's a very high correlation between aging and dementia. So prevalence of dementia among those who are age 65 and over is 9.58% in 2014. And the number of older adults with dementia is expected to grow expected to quadruple in 2050. When we think about dementia, we often think about the patients because the patients, they're going through this transition, they're losing memory and also the functioning skills, and they lose the identity, so there's a lot of problems associated with dementia. And we also think about caregivers because often the family members of dementia patients go through agony. They see how the person is changing, and the fact that your parents or your spouse cannot recognize you makes you feel very sad. However, we need to understand that this dementia problem is occurring in the context of family. So the dementia affects not only the individual who have the disease, but also the family members, and especially the spousal caregivers may be especially vulnerable because they also need to cope with their own aging. And also, within the couple, loss of personal memory can be very detrimental because couples share their identity as the spouse and as a couple, and having dementia means that you're losing that identity. Also, couples coping with dementia may experience fewer pleasurable activities together, so they no longer can share the activities together. So to address these needs, it is important to develop interventions that include both partners in the couple. And so that's why we came up with this project called Life Story Approach for Korean Older Couples Affected by Dementia. And this is a collaborative work with another colleague at Chinese University of Hong Kong and another colleague who is a doctor at Seoul National University Pundang Hospital. And I also want to acknowledge that the original program was developed in the U.S. By Barry Consultation and her colleagues at University of Michigan. So in developing this project, we had two aims. One was to develop a couple-based program for Korean older adults with dementia. And the second was to examine the effectiveness of the program using a clinical sample. So we developed the program. It was essentially the adaptation of the U.S. program, and it was a 5-week program where the clinician, or actually not the clinician, but the interventionist meet with the couple, and we reminisce with the couple about the past, the life of the couple as throughout the marriage, and go through what they went through during their lives. And during the 5-week intervention, we also provided some communication tips, because oftentimes the caregivers are at a loss how to respond to patients with dementia. For example, when the patient cannot remember things, do you have to correct them, or you just you respond saying, "Oh, okay." So caregivers often don't know what to do when these things happen. So we provided some communicating tips along the way. So in the first week, we introduced the program, and then we just talked a little bit about their early marriage, how they met, and how it was like to build a new family, where did they start the new family, things like that. And we also talk about using long-term memory and photos. So we let them know that patients with dementia, they may be not good at remembering recent things, but they often have long-term memory impact. So why don't you use photos, old photos, to remember the old days? And they often enjoy that. Especially those who participated in the program are patients with mild dementia, so they had a long-term memory. In the second week, they bring the photos from their past, and the interventionist talk about the photos together, and they reminisce early stage of marriage together. And then they provide communication tips about active listening. So when the person who has dementia talks, you don't cut what they're saying and correct them, but you just actively listen and say that, we were very happy then, something like that, to respond to what the person who has dementia is saying. And then week 3, you reminisce about mid-years of marriage with photos again, and then talk about finding strengths and praising each other for what they have done so far. So for example, husbands, they praise about wives doing such a good job of child rearing, and wives, they do praise about how husband works so hard to make the family going. You have to know that Korean couples, older couples, are not good at this. They don't usually do this by themselves. So interventionists have to encourage them to do it. And eventually they did it, and then they were very happy that the spouse said so. So we enjoyed it. And in the 4th week, we reminisce recent memories with the photos and talk about how to react to poor memory. And in the final week, we review the communication tips and talk about how to use this experience together after intervention ends. So I wanted to show you what the product is for this intervention. This is a life story book. Okay. This is when they met. This is a traditional Korean wedding, and their honeymoon trip. And they started their family in Daegu, which is rural, not rural, but a little further down. Their child and their mid-years. talk about how thankful they are to their spouse. So we ran this program for 56 couples in Korea. We recruited participants from a clinic at Bundang Hospital near Seoul, and everyone, one person had dementia and the spouse didn't, so they participated. And I wanted to show you all the findings, but the time is limited, so to summarize, we got some very positive feedback from couples indicating that the couple life story approach is acceptable and beneficial to older Korean couples. Especially, they said that this project helped them realize their achievements. Usually, when one person has dementia, you tend to focus on negative things, the decreasing ability of the person who has dementia. But this project encourage them to refocus their attention to positive things that they achieved in their lives. They also talked about the helpfulness of communication tips. So someone who didn't know what to do had some ideas about how to react to the decreasing memory. So rather than pinpointing the errors in their memory, they redirect the people's attention to long-term memory, or they just move along and focus on positive aspects. And they also talked about how they will use this book with the family members. So with the child, some people order more books so that they can give it to their children or grandchildren. So we thought that these books can be used not only to help the couples, but also to increase conversations within the families and also to strengthen intergenerational relationships. We also did some evaluation using some quantitative outcomes. Unfortunately, there were very few significant changes in quantitative outcomes such as depression or caregiving burden. I think that's either because even though this program provides some positive aspects, it doesn't change the fact that the cognitive ability is decreasing. So their caregiving burden may be still present. Or because we didn't have a control group, we weren't able to compare the two groups. And there is a possibility that if we had a control group, the control group might have shown further decrease, a further increase in depression and caregiving burden, but we weren't able to compare it because of the limited funding and the difficulty to recruit people. There were some issues related to loss, grief, and revival of negative memories, and we think that we need to address this a little bit more. At this intervention, we just decided not to focus on it more because we didn't want to upset people, or we didn't want to spend the whole time talking about negative experiences. But there were a few people who were continuously blaming the spouse about what they have done wrong, and I think maybe this kind of program may not be helpful for them. Maybe what they need, maybe more like one-to-one counseling or something that's more therapeutic to help them, relieve the negative feelings that they have in their mind. There are some policies implications that we came up with this intervention. One is the need for community-based interventions for early-stage dementia. In Korea, we have a very big focus on people with dementia, and Korea has established national and regional centers on dementia care. However, their focus has been on identifying dementia patients by screening and increasing awareness of dementia and dementia care, but not much has been done to help those people who are living in the community and who are not as serious to get institutional support or something, but they are still struggling with the declining cognitive abilities, and they're struggling with the grief or the caregiving burden associated with dementia. So I think it is really important to understand the unique difficulties of people who are living with dementia and their caregivers in the community setting, and develop services and programs to address their needs. And also there's the need to develop a rich evidence base for practice. Our program is just one part of the program for caregivers and dementia patients, but we need more support from caregivers as well. So there are some daycare and respite care programs in Korea, but I think we need more, and counseling services or support groups can be helpful as well for these caregivers who are dealing with dementia. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Jung-hwa. So our next speaker will talk about the case of Myanmar, where resources are not quite there yet. Government are not quite realized that aging is an important issue that needs to be addressed. So Professor John Modell from the University of Michigan will give a presentation on
If you don't mind, I'm going to sit down and perhaps ask you to turn out the light just above. Can you see that? Just the one above.
Yeah, so it's going to be completely dark.
Really?
Yeah.
Why don't you try it? Is that okay?
Sure.
I think it's a little clearer. And I'm going to sit. I hope you don't mind. Oops, there are a lot of cords and various things here. Let's see if I can figure out how to use this. Not intended for sitting, I guess. But anyway, I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to discuss the research that Cook and I have been doing in Myanmar, and we've been studying long-term care needs there in the context of population aging, which is occurring there, and poverty, which is prevalent there. This graph shows that there's been very substantial population aging starting to take place as a result of the decline in fertility. Demographically, it's fertility changes that are mainly responsible for population aging. And you can see here that starting in the 1960s, the total fertility rate, the number of children that women would have during their lifetime, started to decline very, very rapidly, while population aging, let's see if I can get this to work. Whoops, it doesn't seem to be let's see what I can do with this. Okay, this, no. No, doesn't look very possible, but here I can do it this way. Oh, it's the wrong way around, no wonder. Okay, so you can see here that total fertility declined very rapidly from 1960 until currently, and is projected to continue to decline, but at a much slower pace, while population aging has the kind of reverse pattern with a very slow rise in population aging since the mid-1960s, 50s, and it's, however, scheduled to increase very, very rapidly in the coming decades. So there is very substantial population aging about to take place as a result of the decline in fertility. Fertility and poor health among older people in Myanmar are among the worst in Southeast Asia. you can see here, if we look at life expectancy of women at age 65, the recent figures I could get from the UN were for 2005 to 2010, but the point is the relative differences are what are of interest here. You can see that it's less than 14 years for women 65 and above in Myanmar to expect to continue their lives that long, while in Thailand it's 18 years and in Vietnam 20 years. So you can see that the poor health is very, very substantial in Myanmar and affecting how soon people are dying. With respect to health and health services, although health services have been improving in recent years under the decades of military rule that has prevailed in Myanmar until just recently, health services were among the most underfunded and the most poorly developed in Southeast Asia. And there's an article in Lancet that's a very prestigious medical journal that points this out in 2012. We conducted a survey of older persons, 60 and older, in 2012. And according to that survey, only 33%, a third of older people reported good health, self-reported, while in Thailand, with a similar survey at around the same time, it was much higher, 45%. So again, showing the relative poor health situation among older people in Myanmar. This shows the physical difficulties that are experienced by older people in Myanmar compared to those in Thailand. So you can see if we talk about functional limitations, such as being able to lift things or climb stairs or walk several hundred meters, you find that about half of them report having at least one functional limitation, compared to only just a little over a third of those in Thailand. If we think about having difficulties, we ask them about having difficulties with a set of daily living activities, at least over a fifth of them in Myanmar say they have at least one difficulty, compared to only 7% in Thailand. The same sort of, there's also a substantial difference in the instrumental activities of daily living. So we can see here that physical difficulties are quite prevalent in Myanmar among older persons, especially when compared to neighboring Thailand. This photo is a picture of a old person self-help group that's been promoted by the organization Help Age International. Some of you may be familiar with that. And Cook and I visited this group. I think we were asking them how many of you have a child in Thailand, and you can see virtually all of them have at least one migrant child in Thailand. But there are these old person self-help groups that are being promoted in Myanmar by Help Age, and they're being encouraged by the government. The government is supporting it actually as a program to increase the extent of old person self-help groups. This is a couple that actually had their new house, doesn't look quite so new, but it is for them, built by their older people self-help groups. So the self-help groups are very, very useful both socially, but also for practical things. They also sponsor livelihood activities and so forth. The various localities in Myanmar have people that are responsible at two different levels for keeping track of others in their community. One level is those that are responsible for 10 households neighboring them, and then there's a higher level of a person who's responsible for 10 of those people, and hence for 100 households in the community. This is a picture of a village administrator and his helper in Myanmar, and they keep track of older people in their village through the reports by these 10 and 100 household leaders. And they are assisted by the fact that they have household registration forms. Even if they're not up to date, they're at least a good basis to start with, and with the help of the 10 and 100 household leaders, they can get up-to-date information about it. Most of the care that older people in Myanmar get, as in virtually everywhere in the region, is from their families, and this graph is showing that the number of physical difficulties that older people report is very much associated with the proportion that are receiving assistance from family members. Even those who don't have any physical difficulties get assistance in daily living activities, but it's lower than those that do have physical difficulties. And you can see the more physical difficulties that people that they had, the more likely they were to say that they were getting personal assistance from a family member. So, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, John. So community is one way to assist older persons when they need help, not only personal care help, but also material support that John mentioned in his presentation. So our next speaker is Christine Ho from School of Economics at SMU. So she's going to talk about her analysis of China data.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to present public forum. So this research received support from the Shirin Fozdar Foundation and Singapore Management University, and it's based on some bias investments and knowledge support in China. So it's well known that parents tend to invest a lot in their sons compared to in their daughters. So for example, among Asian countries such as China or India, you tend to have highly skewed sex ratio in female sons. There's also empirical evidence that sons tend to be breastfed for a longer duration compared to daughters in countries like India and Pakistan. And also, males tend to have higher education attainment, and also there's evidence that parents in South Korea invested more in terms of private tuition for their sons compared to their daughters. So there is a lot of explanations out there in the literature that tries to say, all right, why is it that parents seem to invest that much in sons compared to daughters? Now, some of the explanations that have been advanced are the following. Could it be that sons tend to earn more in the market, and therefore that's why parents would invest more in them? But what the literature has found, at least for the case of China, it's actually the opposite. When a female has an additional year of education, the increase in her wage tends to be higher as a result compared to when males have an additional year of education. So the increase in returns from an additional year of education tend to be higher for females compared to males. So then it could be that, all right, it could be that rather than caring about the market returns, what parents care about is really about their own old age support returns. What do I get back from my children if I invest in them? So this is basically what this paper is about. So recently in China, they introduced a new law that made it basically compulsory that children had to provide emotional and physical support to their parents, or they would have to face fines or jail time. So it could be that relying on filial duty may not be enough. So what I tried to do in this paper is I asked a question first.
do some biased investment in terms of parental monetary investment in their education and in terms of marriage gifts? So if I give you a house, did it pay off in terms of old age support returns? And then, do parents receive higher marginal returns to such investment from sons compared to daughters? So the focus is from an old age support production efficiency point of view. The parents are investing in their children, hoping to get back something. So I use data from the China Health and Retirement Longitudinal Study. It is a representative data set of Chinese individuals aged 45 and above, and it covers 28 provinces in China. Now, it's a very rich data set that contains detailed information on past parental monetary investment in their children's college education, as well as in terms of marriage gifts value. So what is the value of a house if you give a house when your children are married? What is the value of the other types of deferral gifts that you could have given to your children as well? It also contains interesting information on different types of old age support. The ones that I will focus on are in terms of living arrangements, like co-residence and living proximity. Also monetary, the value of monetary and in-kind support. In-kind support can include gifts of clothing or food, and as well as more functional support such as help with instrumental activities of daily living, like bathing, shopping, and so on. So it also contains rich demographic characteristics of both parents and of each co-resident and non-co-resident child that they have. So the sample constitutes of 8,424 families whose youngest child is aged above 21. So I have a very simple conceptual framework that tries to integrate different motives for why children can look after parents, such as filial duty, altruism, and reciprocity. So to sum up the main implications of the framework is that if children care more about their parents, they would of course provide higher support to their parents. Now, on the other hand, parental investment in children's education can help the children earn more, and if the children earn more, they may be able to provide higher monetary support, for example. Or it could be that if I invest in my child's marriage, my child can get married to someone who's richer, and that can also encourage them to give me back support. So, if parents want to maximize the old age support that they receive from children, what they should do is, all right, if a parent has $1 that he needs to decide, okay, do I give this $1 to my son or do I give it to my daughter? If the only thing that they care about is receiving old age support, they should give it to the one who would be more likely to have higher return as opposed to the one who would have lower returns. So I do the analysis by gender household group as well as at the child level. So in other words, the gender household group looks at investment in terms of total investment into children of different genders. And the child level analysis look at investment in one child of a particular gender. So here are the results. So in terms of parental investment, the top panel is at the gender household level, and the bottom panel is the child level analysis. The blue squares denote sons, and the red circles denote daughters. On the horizontal axis, I have the birth cohort of the first child in the family. And the vertical axis shows monetary investment in college education and value of marriage gifts in 10,000 yuan. So as you can see from the graphs, parents seem to have invested more in sons relative to daughters. And this is reflected both at the gender household group analysis and at the child level analysis. And it seems to be present across all of the birth cohorts that I have in data. On average, parents seem to have invested nearly twice more in their sons' education and marriage compared to their daughters. And the graphs look similar when I just focus on education or when I just focus on marriage gifts as well. Now, in terms of marginal parental returns, in terms of old age support, this is what I get. So the top graph, the top panel is at the gender household level,
And the bottom panel is at the child level. The horizontal axis shows investment in 10,000 yuan, and the vertical axis shows the change or the increase in probability of receiving any type of support from my child, such as living close by, or receiving monetary or in-kind support, or receiving help with instrumental activities in daily living. So the blue squares once again denote sons, and the red circles denote the returns from daughters, and the black diamonds denote the difference in marginal returns between sons and daughters. So the way to interpret this is the following. What this is saying is, if I were to increase investment in my son from 10,000 yuan to 20,000 yuan, I would have an increase in the probability of receiving support from sons by approximately 2%. And if I were to instead increase investment in my daughter from 10,000 yuan to 20,000 yuan, I would have a 4% chance, a 4% higher chance of receiving old age support from my daughter. So the marginal return to investment is higher for daughters compared to sons. And this is both at the gender household group level and at the child level. And there is something particularly interesting at the child level, is that if you look at the son, you look only purely at quality. The returns from the son are not very far from zero. So in terms of quality, it seems to suggest that if you invest in daughter, your chances of receiving old age support tend to be higher. So the main findings from this paper is that parents seem to have invested nearly twice more in sons than in daughters, at least in terms of college education and marriage kiss value, but that the marginal parental old age support returns for daughters were higher compared to the returns from sons. Now this has some interesting policy implications, because it seems that in China, individuals, especially in rural areas, they tend to still rely a lot on sons compared to daughters. So there is some past literature that has found that the incentives to participate in the new rural social security program tends to be low. And if parents have a son, they are less likely to participate in the program. But what the findings from this paper suggest is that, well, daughters contribute a lot in terms of old age support for their parents. And if you do invest more in them, you can potentially increase the family level provided old age support. So in light of a recent two-child policy that China recently introduced, it could be that parents may be encouraged to have more daughters, but only time will tell whether they would, as a result, receive higher old age support. Thank you for your attention.
Interesting, thanks so much. So now we have our last speaker, Professor Oshiai from Kyoto University. So she has done comparative research between Japan, including historical as well as contemporary Japanese families, and how that's compared to families in Southeast Asia.
Amy Gokjai. Thank you very much for this invitation to this very important workshop. I'm very, very glad to be here as a representative of worldly most aged society. Yeah, actually in Japan we are not allowed to be old, because the government is trying to change the definition of old age. Now you have to reach, in the 75. This is their plan, but well, so I'm still very, very young. Well, and about aging in Asia, I always think we have to think about two things before starting discussing about old age problems in Asia. First thing is the myth of Asian familiarism. We usually talk about the role of families, particularly in Asian societies and in changing families. but I'm a historical demographer as well, at the same time as family sociologist. So I studied the population registers from 18th and 19th centuries. It's far before the Meiji Restoration. So it's a pre-modern population. And what we found was this. This shows you the patterns of living arrangement for the people living in a village in northeastern part of Japan in 18th and 19th centuries. And this part, these people are living with sons over 15 years old. And this part are living with the sons with sons younger than 18. And in total, less than 50% of people are living with their own sons. This is very different from the norm. So what were the measures these people took? About 10% are living with adopted sons. So they adopted sons. And another 10% were living with son-in-laws. And others are living with only a daughter or only daughter-in-law and grandchildren and spouse, but still 10% are living alone. So this is the situation of our tradition. So not only the elderly people are enjoying life with their children. And it is more true for the people in poverty. For the elderly people with the lowest economic status, 14% of people are living alone. Isn't it huge? And this is for men. And for women, it's still 20%. Solitary situation is not only contemporary problem. It was a problem for Japanese people in our traditional societies. But why don't we remember our past? That is because we are the descendant of the household that didn't extinct. Okay, so we are the descendant of lucky families. So we don't remember miserable elderly people in the past. But at the time, village community and local government were playing some roles. They were providing kind of social welfare, particularly after the famines. And the people were hiring domestic servants. So it was okay to live with domestic servants, as in Singapore today, not in Japan now. The second point I want to emphasize is that demography matters. In pre-modern period, fertility level in Japan was not high. So the people we saw from northeastern part of Japan in 18th century had only 2 children who reached the age of adulthood. So the situation is not so different from ours. But after that period, fertility rate a bit increased and mortality rate decreased a lot. So more people have had more children in modern times. This shows you the patterns of fertility and mortality declines in demographic transitions. And I want to emphasize that we can think about three very different cohorts that appeared in the process of demographic transition. The first cohort was, the cohort who were born before 1925 in Japan. This is of course different by society, and in Japan, this cohort had experienced high fertility and high mortality. This is pre-modern kind of population. And the second cohort were born between 1925 and 49, and they experienced high fertility and low mortality. So they had many siblings, and all of them reached adulthood. This is a big difference from before. This cohort had large population size. And the cohort born after 1950 experienced low fertility and low mortality. So the population size is not so big. Population increase is not so big. Here I'd like to ask you to raise your hand if you have more than 3 sisters and brothers. It means more than 4 siblings, including yourself. So please raise your hand if you have more than 4 siblings. You're a member of more than 4 siblings. Okay, thank you very much.
Do we get a prize?
My point is
parents get a prize.
Yeah, so you are very, very special. This is the point I want to raise. You belong to a cohort very unique in human history. Okay? So you belong to the transitional cohort that enjoyed large sibling size and large population size. You can do, your cohort can do what others cannot do. So your children cannot do the same thing as you. This is very important. And the first thing you can do is realization of ideal family type. For example, in Japan, co-residence of 3 generations. It has been the ideal, but it was difficult to achieve because of the demographic limitations, as I explained. But this cohort can achieve it. And the second thing is nuclearization of the family at the same time as keeping a child living with parents. It means if you have many siblings, brothers and sisters, one can stay with the parents, and others can establish nuclear families. Luke talked about the proportion of children living outside the region of the parents, but it is possible if the sibling size is enough large. And it occurred in Japan after the Second World War. And so more than 4 siblings reached adulthood. And this generation, this cohort, also enjoyed sibling networks for child care and elderly care. This is very important thing I want to emphasize. Yeah, I compared the child care networks in Japan in 1960s and 1980s. It is because I was a young mother in 1980s, and everybody was blaming young mothers at the time, saying young mothers nowadays are not as capable as or older ones in 1960s. But I couldn't believe it. So I tried to study old research outcomes and found out that the mothers and young parents in 1960s were supported by their own parents and siblings. But in 1980s, parents were also there, but there were no support from siblings. Can you tell why? There were no siblings. If you are lucky, you have only one brother or sister. That is helpless. But I found a very good result about families in 1980s. They developed neighborhood networks to compensate the loss in sibling network. And they have friends. So the structure of the network changed. But if you are not successful in constructing new type of network, you'll be isolated and suffer from childcare anxiety. It became a social problem at that time. And the same thing is happening about elderly care network in Japan. In 1990s, we heard of overwork deaths of caregivers. Is it happening in this country? Have you heard of overwork deaths? Yeah, it's common in business in Japan, but it was also happening for the family caregivers. So in some cases, family caregivers died before the cared. It's tragedy. Yeah, but it will be your future. So because of the changing demographic conditions, you will lose family networks, and you don't have siblings to support you when you are taking care of your parents. So you are very easy to die. So in 2000s, even the Japanese government initiated long-term care insurance to share the cost of care with the families. And at the same time, the increasing involvement of men in family care giving was observed. So now, 30% of family caregivers in Japan are men. How many in Singapore? Well, so in Japan, many husbands and sons are taking care of their wives or mothers or fathers. But still, we have so many cases of lonely deaths. And demographic changes are occurring to the societies one by one. So Japan experienced this population aging in 1990s, and it happened in Western countries in 1970s, and in Asia, other Asian countries, you are experiencing this now. So you will soon see isolated deaths and overwork deaths. So, but the good news is long-term care insurance. We found a good effect of long-term care insurance on the families. Using a time use survey conducted several times in Japan. As you see, as you see, the proportion of men and women who are usually caring for family member is increasing. The long-term care insurance was introduced here, 2000. But the proportion of men and women involved in family care is increasing. This is men, this is women. However, time spent in care has decreased after 2000 for women, only for women. For men, it's stable. So,
60 minutes per week, per day.
So, sorry, I cannot answer now.
Okay.
Sorry, it was published several years ago, so I'm sorry. And the proportion of caregivers who are hiring caring assistants is increasing for both men and women. But more men are hiring assistants because men are usually a bit richer than women. And this graph shows you the effect of hiring hiring care helpers. The time spent in care only decreased for women who are using caring assistants between this year and this year. And for the people who didn't use caring assistant, there's no change. So we can say that this is a clear effect of long-term care insurance. So in short, the introduction of long-term care insurance reduced the burden of female family members caring for elderly relatives. However, because of the rapid population aging, the overall burden of care of families has actually increased. And men and relatives living elsewhere are now also involved. It would be useful to think about four sectors: state, market, family and kin, and community and voluntary sectors, to think about the sharing of care responsibility. The individual is in the center, not in the family, because not everybody have a family. This is reality. And when we talk about care, people discuss about defamiliarization of care. And according to Espin Andersen, there are two directions of defamiliarization, to the state and to the market. Socialization of care and commodification of care. And we can place social democracy, liberalism, socialism, and familialism in this diagram like this. So there are at least three directions of defamiliarization of care. If we think about community as well. But usually we use this diagram. Then the patterns, Then the patterns of elderly care diamond is probably like this. This is a study from that we conducted 10 years ago. So the shapes are a bit changing for some countries. But in China, this is about provision of care. The government promoted communities to provide elderly care. And the role of the family and relatives was quite large. And in Singapore, you have strong market. Blue circle means market. You are purchasing care from the market, and the role of the family is also large. And for Taiwan, the shape is quite similar to Singapore. And in Japan, the market was also promoted, but by the governmental support through long-term care insurance. So now the two circles are overlapped like this. And Korea is close to Japan, and you have more developed community care, as far as I understand. And 10 years ago, the situation in Thailand was not so great like this, but probably the situation might be better these days. But I have to warn you that the defamiliarization of care provision is not the same thing as defamiliarization of care finance. Even if the market provides you care, you have to pay the cost. So, care provision and care finance are crossed like this, then most of the Asian societies are here, which I call liberal familiarism. You can purchase care, so the care is provided by the market, but still you have to pay the cost. So you still have the burden, care burden. Then the conclusion and policy recommendation. Asian familiarism was never practiced fully, even in the past, and is becoming impossible after the transitional cohort is gone. Care networks have to be restructured to share the responsibility of care by defamiliarization by the state, market, and community. Long-term care insurance that makes the market and the state works well to relieve family caregivers in Japan. Liberal familiarism, relying on defamiliarization of care through the market, result in insufficient care for economically disadvantaged people and family abandonment. Public financial support is important. Policies should assume that more men will be involved in family care in the near future. So the government should think about elderly care leave for men. Can I add one more thing? What I want to say at the end is that aging is not only the problem about the elderly people. Population aging is about changing age structure, and it affects the size of labor force and economic performances of the society. So we have to consider sharing child care responsibility as well. And we have to think about work-life balance to keep a certain level of fertility. So fundamental reconstruction of the whole society have to be considered. Thank you very much.
A very good wrap-up presentation. So now I would like to invite Professor Fenn Chen, who's from University of Maryland, but now is a visiting professor at Fudan University. She's going to moderate the discussion sessions, and we have about 30 minutes. So feel free to ask any questions. In our workshop, there's actually some other countries, but since we don't have enough time, so for example, we have Fenian work on Philippines as well as China, Ivo work on Indonesia, Prof. Tay work on Malaysia. So if you have questions about these countries, you can ask our speakers as well. Thank you.
Thanks. So let's give another round of applause to our presenters for the
limited, so
we have until 4:20.
30 minutes.
we have 30 minutes. Okay, so I'm just going to open up the floor right away to the audience. If we have questions for the presenters, just please raise your hand, and if you could stand up and then speak a little bit louder and direct your question to whoever, which presenter it is.
Is it only questions or comments also?
Oh, comments, observation, reflection.
First I have a comment, or a question actually, for Ms. Ho. Sons are breastfed longer. Is it because the boys have no breasts? Don't answer. My statement is this, that in India, where I come from originally, they say that a son is a son till he gets his wife. A daughter is a daughter all her life. Being my mother's son, I would like to say that this is much more than just playing nursemaid. You notice the whole world where women are disenfranchised, nations are down. The whole world is a good example. So, in our way of thinking, if you have to choose between the education of a girl or a boy, and you can only afford one, preference to the girl, because she is the first teacher of the family. So that's my comment on this. Now, thank you.
Thank you. So, Professor Ho, would you like to respond?
Well, based purely on the findings, what you care about is old age support. The findings do suggest that if you were to invest more in daughters, you would receive higher old age support. I have to clarify as well that in the analysis, when I look at help in terms of instrumental activities of daily living, I look not just at help from the sons of the daughter, but also from the daughters-in-laws and sons-in-laws. So the results that I showed you was, despite daughters-in-laws help being credited to the sons, the returns from sons were still lower compared to daughters. So it kind of suggests that it could be that there are other reasons why parents are investing so much in sons. Not just because I want to receive all this support, maybe I care about who will perform those ancestral rites for my funeral of the gone, and so on. But thank you very much for the comments.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. I have a question. Listening to a couple-oriented approach dealing with dementia, if that has an impact, now I'm wondering, will that the same approach prevent the not older person having from dementia? In a way, having checking again and look at the older photos as between husband and wife, it depends who suffer from dementia. So if that has a positive impact on dementia, will that be the same approach apply to us, probably to us, preventing from having dementia happening to one of us as a couple? So that's only my curiosity using that, the same approach. The second question, hearing from what has experienced in Japan, I'm just wondering, the men now get involved in a caring, and I know everywhere in the world, women tend to outlive men. So will that be now possible, women and men growing up together, so now not too many widows, in a way that we live together? So how we improve the life expectancy of men, then we can grow together and die together. So that's my question.
Thank you. I guess, Professor How, would you like to respond first to the dementia question?
So you asked whether having this program
applying this program to couples who don't have dementia would prevent couples from having dementia. It's difficult to answer because there are many factors which lead to dementia, and actually there's no one protective factor or risk factor. But research has shown that social engagement helps protecting against dementia. So I think this kind of activities will have some beneficial effects, but there are many other protective factors such as exercise or brain exercise that are known to be effective in reducing or protecting against dementia. So I think it should be considered with those other factors as well.
Can I make a comment on this? This is from personal experience. To avoid dementia, like in the case of my wife and I, we argue and fight every day. So that means we remember what it was all about. It could also cut down the life expectancy. But in this case, we haven't succeeded.
By the way, they say they're developing a pill to guard against or help dementia patients, or prevent them from having dementia. Now, whether the pill will develop or not, or it's in the process of being developed.
I also wanted to share in China, this storytelling approach, not just old couple doing it. They pair up an old couple and a young couple just married, and they become a buddy system. So it's a sharing, it's exchanging, it's mentoring, and all that. Could I intervene here? Because there are few persons here whom I would really like to hear and let them share some of their reflections. They are not prepared, but I'm going to call for them to share a little of, because I think they have great experiences and expertise. The first one I will have to call upon is Dr. Jennifer Lee, who is the chair of the Agency for Integrated Care, AIC, one of our big network here, looking at this issue very seriously, and she has been the pioneer in steering the direction and strategies for Singapore. Jennifer, response or share your reflections?
I should have known there was no such thing as a free invitation to a seminar. Well, actually, I found all the presentations very interesting, and particularly demographics, because I think that's actually what's doing us in Singapore is our demographics. Because our aging is just so fast that we are scrambling we've come to a realization this was about already 8 years ago, we needed to work fast, but sometimes it's an issue of critical mass, because our demographic curve was running so gently. If you started actually trying to develop the sector too early, actually there may not enough demand, and then we hit this inflection and now we're just shooting up. I actually had a question, trying to get out of doing the work, for Dr. Oyi-chan? Ochia. Okay. And that was, you talked about long-term care insurance, and that's been very helpful. But I vaguely remember, Singapore, there's an advantage to being a young country. Young, not just as a country. We go running around all over the place trying to learn from other countries. And I remember visiting quite some years back, actually, Japan, talking about, I think it was long-term care insurance. And then after the introduction of insurance, the government found that what their projections were for the cost of this insurance were way out of, because the moment we introduced it, the numbers actually went up. So I actually had a question to ask. Am I remembering correctly that this was so? And how's, and if that's the case, how are they managing? Is it sustainable? The reason I asked this question is, and CCAM and I were here talking about this, it sounded really, it's great when you are able to use the money to hire help.
And then she was asking, what are we doing about it? And we've got our elder shield and all that, but I think many people in the room are actually very familiar, are people who are working in the sector, have been studying in the sector. So, our elder shield is, it's not enough, okay? It's so little. The government is giving something, but it's very, very little. It's still going to be a heck of a struggle. Not only that, it's time limited. So, but again, people in the room, our government is very cautious and very prudent. And I think there's been a lot of review going on. And I think, again, if you've been following, you will see that actually they have been ramping up subsidies, non-costs, putting in more and more elements of insurance. But we're progressing it very slowly because we're afraid you open Pandora's box and then you can't go home. So has it been a problem? Then I'll talk some more a little bit. Okay. With the long-term care insurance. Yeah.
Yes. It is increasing. The budget size for long-term care insurance is increasing than the expected speed. Because now people do not consider it a shame to use this system. But to make that system sustainable, we have to have more workforce. It means still Japanese women are out of workforce. So we have to have more women in workforce, and probably we have to invite migrants to be the members of our country. Otherwise it is but the argument about sustainability is quite political. So the people who want to cut the system insist that this system is not sustainable. But as I told you, the family care was not sustainable either. So you have to choose to keep women or to use budget, governmental budget. And if women are not trapped in caregiving, they can work in business and they can pay taxes. And probably this way is more sustainable. And another way we have to discuss is migrants. In Asian countries, Singapore have good quality migrants. But in Japan, our government is very reluctant to invite migrants. This is one reason why our society is losing power, productivity, efficiency. So this is one more thing we have to think about.
Thank you. Gentlemen, sorry, could you say something about what AIG does? AIC,
yes. I'm really cautious about this because I can talk forever about basically, it's just that there's so much to be done. So if you want me to just talk a little bit about AIC?
Just nuggets, yeah.
Okay. This is basically, I don't know how many of you are familiar, some of you may be very familiar. This is something called the Agency for Integrated Care. I think in the old days it would have been the statutory board. Essentially, we are we're government owned fully, and we do sector development for long-term care. It was set up about maybe 8 years ago. We're in our 8th year now. And it's basically, when we got started, our population in 2006 was about maybe 8%, 8 point something percent over 65. We use 65 rather than 60. Last year, it was 12.4, something like that, which in other words, 50% more over 65 then. So we are really shooting up. So, and prior to when we got, really started on all of this, a lot of the care was provided because because at the time it was adequate. It was adequate to rely on family, And because the numbers of older people were less, and the families were bigger, more siblings around. So, we weren't, now we have to prepare for a different situation, as you said, you can't think it's going to be the same. So, in those days, largely not for, care was provided largely not for profit groups, VWOs, our charitable organizations, very little participation from private sector, mainly in residential care, nursing homes, Everything else was all, if anybody provided anything to help families, it was charitable organizations. We knew that was not going to be enough just from the sheer volume of older folks. Even if we kept everybody healthier, you were still from sheer volume of numbers, as you said, percentage versus absolute numbers. It was just not going to be enough. So we just had to go in there. One thing about Singapore government that you have to handle, once they've identified there's a need to do something, lots of funding came in. But it's just a matter of how fast can we move and just growing, not so easy. You can throw money at things, but as you know, manpower's a big issue. Also quality type issues, better quality of care. So anyway, that's what AIC does. We've been in there with just facilitators. So we just try, see, collate needs, do a bit of, training. We administer a lot of grants that governments are giving, both to service providers as well as to individuals. So there's masses of work going on. Again, I was interested in that little diamond because first it was like, okay, government's got money to plonk in, do subsidies, increase that. Families, try and encourage families. We're now looking at not just nursing homes, but comprehensive home care, day care, and residential care, and all in a more flexible way so that individuals can actually put together something that is useful for them rather than that little boxes that doesn't make sense for you because you can't tweak it at all. It's all work in progress, by the way. Okay, there's a lot to do. But over and above that, we also recognize the community, that other little point of them. So, in fact, one of the more recent things that we've been addressing is what we call community networks for seniors. So we're actually going out and we're again testing it with, we need those GRCs, the communities that are interested, because you can't drag the horse. You can't drag the horse to the water. The fellow won't drink. So and it's impossible to work grassroots unless actually they are keen themselves. So we've actually started a few of these. Maybe 3, I think, areas, and we're trying to actually, over time, roll it out to all GR, all through the constituencies. But having community networks, so it's your neighbors, volunteers, and so you have office that will be using the PG offices and the SACs. Sorry, a lot of acronyms in Singapore. Hopefully, those of you who are familiar will know what I'm talking about. As the little sort of focus point, and actually trying to work with seniors themselves who are living in the area to try and do some befriending, keep an eye out, do some helping. So these are, masses of things, but it's just some of the stuff that they're doing. And I should keep quiet, otherwise nobody else will have.
Is AIC a funding agency?
We just administer government funds.
Oh, you're not a funding agency,
yeah.
Right?
So a lot of grants, Seniors Mobility Fund, all by the way, the foreign workers, the training grants, and the grants that you have for when you have a senior in the family. So we administer all that kind of stuff. So
Thank
it's
you.
like massive.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to call on Kalyani.
Okay. It was almost time.
We can make time.
I won't take up as much time as Jen because I think I can explain to that level. But just to let you all know that I am from Singapore University of Social Sciences, formerly known as SIM University. And also I am involved with the Singapore Caregivers Cooperative, which is not a VWO, but it is a cooperative model, which I think a lot of people in Singapore do not really know much about. But it's quite popular in underdeveloping countries or developing countries where people get together to help each other. Basically, I think that is what caregivers groups believe, that it gives them that dignity. So my take on this seminar is that I really enjoyed all the presentations. It's a very good way to summarize what's happening in the region, and especially Myanmar, which we do not know that much about. And then trying to see where Singapore is in the whole context. I think we are following behind Japan, like the flying geese pattern, they call it, yeah? And the myth of, you call it Asian familism. I'm wondering how fast we'll be reaching there, and how fast our sectors will develop, especially the community sectors. But one thing I had, which I wanted to bring up, is that I've often heard families, especially those in their 50s and 60s, they talk about a dilemma they face. They say the government wants to encourage us to work longer, beyond 60, 65, 70 even. But our families, our children say, Mom, Dad, don't you think you'd be better off looking after your grandchildren? You know, they need you. And so there is a pull in two directions. And they would like to be involved even as volunteers. But then they say we only have time in the weekends because weekdays we are very busy. Even if they're not full-time grandparents, but they're helping out for children in many ways. So this is the reality on the ground. When you talk about caregiving, it's also caregiving for spouse, caregiving for grandchildren, and it's happening all at the same time. It's not like phase by phase, you know, then it's very convenient, but sometimes there's a pull and a push in both directions. I'm lucky because my children are both migrated overseas, so I do FaceTime with them and so on. We do keep the ties. But I think, Jennifer, I think that's another group, you know, all those elderly in their 60s and 70s with children abroad. So what kind of adjustment they make? Maybe they might have the resources, but not the psychosocial care because the children are obviously not around. So that's where I think that collective responsibility and community care will play a major, major role in future. This is my take. Yeah.
Now I'd like to call upon the one young person whom I recently met. Because when we talk about aging, we always think about older people, right? For older people. This is a young person who started a program on fitness for them. And then I wanted you to really share that. Janice, sitting right here, quietly.
I'm Janice. So I started two companies. One is called Aging Asia. It's Asia's first aging market consultancy. And we look at the world's best models on aging and we share it around the world through a lot of industry programs and a conference. The second is Aspire 55, Asia's first virtual retirement village, which I started 3 years ago as a pilot project. So today we have probably about 110 active users, so older people who come and exercise twice a week, consistently with full attendance 96 times in a year. So we are probably the only place that can encourage your parents to want to age in a very successful way. But the whole idea was to look at what can we develop as an affordable alternative to retirement villages. Every real estate developer out there is hungry to learn about how to create a successful retirement village. But the hardest thing about a retirement village is actually the community. And also it's very expensive if Singapore were to build many, many retirement villages. So we looked at an alternative, affordable aging in place model for Singapore. How can we still deliver all the services that a retirement village offers within a small clubhouse? So instead of building a whole retirement village, we built virtual communities. But each virtual community is supported by a clubhouse. So within each clubhouse, we are a family unit supporting 200 people. So with that, we are able to create, hopefully in future, many small family structures that would be your second family in the community. So you would have a personal trainer who would look after a group of 200, supported by another team of people who would gradually provide you more and more services as you age.
So for those 55 and above, put a hand, join the fitness club.
Our youngest member is 44.
Yes,
Oldest
Jennifer.
89.
Yeah, if I may just add on a little bit too. Because Janice just reminded me of something I had wanted to say and I got thinking that we are a very small little island. And most of the time we think of that as a disadvantage because we are not in control of our, of our greater destiny, so to speak, in terms of anything else that happens in the world. We have to adjust and accommodate. And we don't have a big enough market and so on and so forth. But the density of our living, arrangements and our population, our housing, actually provides a lot of opportunities and potential for very interesting approaches to what other countries are doing. Because we are all just here, 40 kilometers across 23 kilometers, 40 and 23, and with all of our high rise. So the sorts of interesting, we need more Janices,
Yes.
with interesting ways of how do we turn what we have actually into retirement communities. I mean, we are all, just already living where we are. We just need some tweaking in terms of, making your apartments and all that, elder safe and so on and so forth. So it's just something is actually very interesting and lots of potential.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I saw a couple of hands from one to accommodate. Yeah, please.
Okay,
go ahead, please.
I'm just a simple volunteer. I used to be English teacher. I just want to bring to your notice this family service center where I'm volunteering once or twice a week. It's very meaningful because our executive director, Yubi Ling, she's excellent. She says what her family service center is built on the asset-based community development. In other words, it doesn't view the rental flats we serve. It doesn't view them as burdens and liabilities. People we have to subsidize. Whatever they can give, they also give. So if they have gardening skills, we now have a beautiful vegetable plant in front of our, almost like a garden, and we eat there as well. So in terms of gardening, cooking, a lot of things. I go there to give free English lessons. But this place is so special that the volunteers keep coming back. I suspect it's because of Billing, but she really lives out her stuff. She said her center does not. Sure, money is very important, so the government is financing her for 3 years. But she said more important than that, she wants it run by love, goodwill, transparency, and honesty. And I'm a born idealist. I will die an idealist, unfortunately. My parents, think I'm the worst. Not the worst, but like lack of practicality. But I'm like, because she lives out love, goodwill, transparency, honesty. I want to keep going back. And so many people are doing the same. And what she has given to the people there is more than just physical food. Yeah, physical. The money also she gives to deserving folk. She's given them dignity. She's given them like a sense of self-respect. So I really value that work there. I think I will spend 1 more year there. After that,
Thank you.
open.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for.
We have time. We have time.
Okay, please.
I'm Robert Koo. I had the good fortune of running into Claire, long-time friend, a couple of weeks ago, and got invited to this seminar. I'm a volunteer director at the SAGE Counseling Center. The person who really knows all the facts is my colleague over there, Mr. Wong, who is the ED of the
Tell
center.
me what SAGE is, because our foreigners will not know what
So
SAGE is.
SAGE Counseling Center, we provide for the elderly, classified as anyone above 50. I'm supposed to say SAGE now. And their caregivers. We provide hotline service and counseling. And listening to Dr. Ochai's presentation, I find that, well, bearing in mind that the data is 10 years old, I find that what we face today, we are already there in many of the observations. The lonely, when we look at the data that we collect from people who call us, loneliness is among the highest. And I think that could be partly because even though we are a small country, maybe the nuclearization of our families has caused older people to feel so much loneliness, because we are so, even though we're a small country, we live in so many different places. But on the other hand, we have been quite fortunate in the sense that my generation of the 4 sibling type, we have the resources largely to afford foreign care. Foreign workers are still fairly affordable. But looking at the generation next to, below mine, family of 2 or family of 1, I think the problem for them will become a lot bigger, and that's where I really hope that with the expanded government support for long-term care, that will really help. Now, on that point, I recently came across another project similar to Genesis, where they're creating an activity center, not just a gym, but a whole activity center. Actually, it's at the Old Catholic High premises, to bring in the elderly to come in and get fit, do art and everything. And I was asking the promoter how much it's going to cost the people to come to that. And it's going to be $1,800 a year. So I asked him whether that's really for the low income or middle income. Actually, to be able to afford that, you're looking at middle income people. That is something that lower income people will also need in the community centers and so on. And there again, is government funding able to look beyond just long-term care insurance, but also fitness programs? If you look at things like Skills Future, they're only looking at causes, but for the elderly, maybe they should be looking at programs like that that help them get fit. That could be an application of Skills Future or Fitness Future, rather than just looking at.
They do, right?
Yeah.
Janice?
Yeah.
They use it
In
for-
fact, the one that you've mentioned is our joint venture partner.
Okay.
We'll be opening
Top
a
out,
Spire
yeah.
55 Sterling at Waterloo next week.
That's right.
There you go. So that's that.
And I think in Australia, you can actually use your health insurance to pay for a fitness program so that you can stay fit. But insurance providers here now are also trying to evaluate different possibilities, but I don't think they're not coming around as fast yet. So there needs to be a different discussion with the insurance providers to evaluate.
But I was thinking Skills Future is really focusing on causes. And if you're looking at people in the 70s and 80s, what kind of causes do they go
We
for?
should give
But
the
if,
feedback.
yeah, if it is extended into fitness programs, that will be a much better use of the money.
Sure.
Well, in the U.S., there definitely has been an effort to push for the expanding the fitness part and then with the insurance.
But as expanding fitness cannot just be elderly going to the fitness. It also
Right.
has to be measurement of the health improvements and the attendance report.
With the assessment. I think I saw some hands in the back earlier.
I just want to say that this lady mentioned that Singapore is very small, and she's right. The program seems to be more or less Singapore centrist. The elephant in the room that nobody's addressed, and you can see it when you look at Asia as a whole, is religion. And if you go to Thailand or Buddhist countries, you find that there is already quite a bit of activity and program with the Buddhist viharas. The same thing happens, for example, if you go to Mohammedan countries with the sarais. So, while we are talking about a very modernistic concept here, we are not going to be able to impact any of that until we are able to relate to that. And we can't relate to that if we are ignorant of that. And we are ignorant of that because we haven't brought that point around here. I hope in the next session that you have, when I'm 100, you can talk about the connection between religion and their activities. You know, in Thailand, nobody really can starve. You just go into a vihara and you're fed. Now that's social work, whether you're old or young or anybody. So I'm saying that these are very fertile grounds for people who are involved here to contact them. Perhaps they can make an impact that side, or they can make an impact on one of our programs here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that in fact has been really a burgeoning area of research in terms of the role of religion and health and aging. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Thank you. I'm Indu Utomo from Australian National University. I'm very happy to be here and listening to all the positive influence and how aging should be very productive, and like what has been mentioned. My study is a very different study. It's about aging, but in rural area, similar to Professor Nodell's study. But I want to stress the importance of religion in accommodating the spiritual well-being, anti-depression, anti-loneliness aspect that the respondent in the rural area that I observed. So I found that in the villages that I studied, 10 villages in rural Indonesia with very different background in culture, ethnicity, and also religion, that religion become the major kind of life, how do you say that? Kind of a life force when they age. So I think that's very, very positive.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the one that I don't like is elderly in the rural area. They become very, how do you say that? They see their life as waiting for death, and they become more and more involved in religious activities. So that's one point that I want to share. But while you are talking about aging in developed country, it is very, very different in what elderly is facing in rural area. They are not thinking about, joining a gym for elderly, or they are not thinking about life in the retirement villages. They are even still struggling. These are 80+ women who walk more than 15 kilometers a day to fetch water. Yeah, and they work to fetch water, and they carry it for almost 15 liters in one go, just to get a compensation of 20 cents. So this is I listen to all of you and I go, whoa, this is very, very different in what respondent in my study area are experiencing. But I have 3 data sets looking at school children and also looking at young adults and looking at elderly. And now I'm developing a more integrated analysis of how the girl child, since little, is experiencing, if you say training, to become a caregiver until she reached elderly, and then when the girl child already become an elderly, then she herself doesn't have anybody to look after her because the husband already passed away, and maybe the children also is abroad or in other city. So I have I'm thinking that gender inequality in care throughout the life course is strongly happening. we as a girl child, especially me as a Japanese, from a Japanese ethnicity, I was trained since little to provide and care for my 4 brothers and also for my parents. And as we grow to become a young mother, we have to care for our children and also juggle between work and family. And then as we age, then we have a burden as well to look after our family and our mother, father, and father-in-law. And that includes as well, because usually women and men, when they get married, there's an age difference, and commonly is the husband who is older. Then we have an additional burden of caring for the husband. And then, like I mentioned earlier, then I will age, and the husband already died, and when I need care, then I already provide throughout my life course. Maybe it's not available. So I would like to stress that the gender inequality of care throughout the life course for women is extraordinary. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kiro. And I want to echo the point that you just made about the challenges that we're facing. Although we're faced with this population aging problem, you throw out different contexts, but the way that we deal with it has to be diverse, and it has to be very specific, depending on the context, depending on the points of life course, even within the same country, depending on which group are we talking about, you really need to be an all-out effort. So I guess as demographers, we always like to say demography is the destiny, and that with declining fertility and mortality, those are inevitable. So population aging is inevitable. But as sociologists, I also want to think it's evident from all the comments and all the presentation that we human beings have tremendous human agencies. So together, whether it's family, individuals, the community, the government, or different sectors, we can come all together and to face this tough challenge, but at the same time, we can make this work. So I want to thank everybody, our presenters, our organizers, our sponsor, and all the participants for a wonderful session. I think we also have another workshop tomorrow and all day long discussion on this important topic. Pug already mentioned that we also have refreshment outside, so I'm sorry if I missed any hands earlier, but we can continue on with the informal discussion afterwards. So please let's end this with a round of applause.
Tea time.